They told you it was over, and you almost believed them, but endings are only visible from the middle of the page. The author never calls it the end when you're still breathing, and as long as you can inhale, heaven can still exhale purpose into you. You thought the fall disqualified you, but what if the fall was the very place he planned to rebuild you? Failure is not a locked door, it's a mirror. It doesn't close your future, it reveals your foundation. Some wounds do not bleed, they echo, and some of you are not hurting from what happened, but from what didn't happen, delayed dreams, silent nights, years that seemed to walk away from you. But listen carefully, even shadows require light to exist. Pain is not proof of abandonment. It is the pressure that makes gold out of rock. You are not being crushed, you are being carved. He who wrote the galaxies is not struggling with your chapter. He who designed time is not threatened by your timeline. Your detours were not accidents, they were training grounds. You are not late, you are in progress. The author is not done. You do not define the story, he does, and he does not write tragedies unless they become triumphs. What you call too late, he calls just before the miracle. There are pages you've torn out, and ones you've tried to burn. Regret is heavy, but it is not heavier than redemption. Even if the ink of your past drips with shame, he writes with a pen that turns ashes into ink. You thought your purpose was buried, but buried things are not always dead. Sometimes they are seeds, and seeds don't look like trees until their roots break the soil. You see delay, he sees development. You see silence, he sees setup. You see emptiness, he sees space for overflow. You see weakness, he sees readiness. The years you thought were wasted will one day stand as proof that survival was never the goal transformation was. Do not measure yourself by the eyes of those who walked away. Some left not because you were empty, but because they could not handle what you were about to carry. You are not abandoned clay, you are still on the wheel, turning in the hands of a potter who sees flaws as places to show fingerprints. Even your quietness is not empty. He works in silence like roots beneath frozen earth. Like stars in the black sky, just because it's dark doesn't mean it's over. You do not need to understand the story, you need to stay in the chapter. You do not need to feel strong, you need only to trust the strength that is writing your name in grace. God is not done with you yet, not while your lungs still hold breath, not while your heart still beats truth, not while your spirit still hopes against hope. He is not done because you are not finished. And the next line of your life might just be the sentence that changes everything. You survived the fall, but survival is not the same as healing. You wiped the blood, but you kept the shame. You kept walking, but you never looked back to ask, what did I learn? Failure does not end your purpose. It reveals where it begins. It doesn't say you're finished. It says now you're ready to begin correctly. You were never called to be flawless. You were called to be faithful. And faith is not grown in success. It is forged in the fire of everything that went wrong. You did not fall because you were weak. You fell because you were human. But staying down is not humility, it's surrender to a lie. The lie that failure cancels your calling. Failure is not your name. It is just a chapter, not the cover. And God doesn't write people off. He rewrites the sentence. The greatest lessons don't come from victories. They rise from the ashes of what should have worked but didn't, of what you prayed for but lost, of what you built but watched collapse anyway. You thought the door closed because you were disqualified. But some doors are slammed shut to save you from walking into a lesser version of yourself. You are not what you lost. You are who you are becoming because of the loss. You cannot graduate from purpose without enrolling in pain. And pain speaks the language no comfort ever taught. It teaches you to recognize what truly matters. It strips you to truth. Your failures are not wasted moments. They are instructors. And the greatest education is not found in books, it's found in brokenness. The truth is, most people don't rise in spite of failure. They rise because of it. What didn't work taught them how to work smarter. What didn't last taught them what to value. You learned to listen differently when they left. You learned to pray deeper when it all went quiet. You learned to see clearer when the lights went out. You learned to walk stronger when your legs were trembling. Your scars are not signs of defeat. They are signs you fought and lived to tell the story. Failure didn't destroy you, it revealed the strength you forgot you had. A fall is not fatal unless you refuse to get up, and grace is not wasted on the fallen, it waits for them. Waits like a teacher who knows the test will come again. But next time you'll be ready, because now you know what it feels like to fall alone, and now you know never to climb without him again. Now you understand success without surrender is still failure in disguise. The world may have labeled you, but heaven still calls you by your design, and the one who formed you in secret never planned to leave you in shame. Some of the greatest prophets were failures before they were voices. Some of the strongest leaders were cowards before they were courageous. Some of the deepest lovers of God were once liars, runners, and wrecks, but none of them were abandoned in their fall, because he is not afraid of your weakness. He is not ashamed of your stumbles. He is not surprised by your collapse. He is committed to your comeback. You may think you failed too badly to recover, but you didn't fail, you were trained. You didn't lose, you were redirected. You didn't break, you were reshaped. It's not a cemetery, it's a classroom, and class is still in session. So stand back up, shake off the dirt, and say, if this is where I learn, then I will learn. Because God does not graduate quitters, but he crowns the broken who kept walking, and today you're not walking as the same person who fell, you're walking as someone who knows what the fall taught you. You are not a failure, you are a student of redemption. And every step forward proves God is still writing, and he refuses to end on this chapter. You didn't just fall, you felt it, deep, like it carved through bone and didn't ask permission, like it came not just to visit, but to live in your chest. And when you stood back up, the limp in your soul became louder than the voice in your mouth. But let me tell you something you forgot in the darkness. Even shadows prove there is light. Pain didn't come to kill you. It came to teach you that comfort never could. It came to unlock parts of your soul that only break open under pressure. You didn't cry because you were weak, you cried because something holy inside you refused to go numb. You kept feeling even when it hurt, and feeling is proof that you are still alive. You didn't ask for this pain, but it found you anyway, not because God forgot you, but because he trusted you to carry what others would have cursed. Pain has a strange way of growing things, not quickly, not painlessly, but deeply. You learn more in a year of sorrow than in a decade of ease, because sorrow makes you listen to silence, and silence has a voice of its own. The thing about pain is it doesn't lie. It tells you what broke, what mattered, what you hoped for, and what you never want to feel again. Pain refines you. It shaves off the pride, burns away the illusions, leaves you face to face with what's real. You stop chasing applause when you've suffered enough to realize peace is louder than praise. You stop craving shallow connections when you've bled through betrayal. Pain is not the enemy. Pretending it means nothing, that is the real poison. And you've done it before, smiled while breaking, laughed while crumbling, shook hands while your soul shook harder. But that's over now. Because pain gave you X-ray vision, you see through fake now, you hear lies faster, you spot fear dressed as ambition, and still you love, still you serve, still you hope. That's what makes you stronger than those who never broke. Don't let the smooth talkers fool you. Most of them have never met the floor. You did, and it met you back with tears, dust, silence, and God. That moment when no one else showed up, he did, not with explanations, but with presence. Not with quick fixes, but with a quiet that wrapped itself around your storm. Pain teaches you that God doesn't always rescue, sometimes he sits, right beside the ache, right inside the grief. He doesn't always remove the thorn, but he makes sure it doesn't destroy your purpose. He doesn't always answer the why, but he gives you strength to survive the now. Pain doesn't mean God is absent. It means he's preparing, because comfort never pushed you to grow, but pain forces you to become. There are things growing in your spirit right now that peace never planted. They were born of nights when no one called, of mornings when you didn't want to rise, of prayers that sounded more like groans than words. And still you rose, still you trusted, still you carried hope like a cracked jar that somehow still poured light. You will never be the same again, but maybe that's the point. Maybe the old version of you couldn't carry the future God had in mind. So pain had to do what comfort refused, transform you. Don't waste your pain. Don't hide it in shame. Don't apologize for it. Hold it up and say, "This is where I met God." Not in the pews, not in the applause, but in the quiet where no one clapped and I still chose to believe. Pain is not punishment. It is preparation. Not the end of your story, but the fire that reveals your next chapter. And when you feel the darkness rise again, remember, shadows don't exist without light. So if there's a shadow, there's a light behind you. You're not broken beyond repair. You're being shaped beyond recognition. And the pain you carry today may be the platform you stand on tomorrow. Pain shaped you. But pain didn't finish you. It bent your knees, but not your calling. It paused your voice, but not your value. You've cried over chapters you didn't expect, pages soaked in silence, paragraphs filled with confusion. But none of it means it's over. The story is not done. The author has not set down the pen. The ink hasn't dried where you thought it ended. There's still space on the page. You thought your ending came early. But some stories require longer tension to produce deeper redemption. Just because the scene looks broken doesn't mean the script has been cancelled. Some of the greatest scenes are birthed in the middle of silence and misunderstanding. You've skipped ahead in your mind, tried to predict the outcome, tried to finish a story that wasn't yours to complete. But you're not the author, you're the character who must keep walking. And the author, he doesn't waste pages. He doesn't scribble out purpose just because you stumbled. He doesn't discard the plot just because you don't understand it yet. You don't have to know the ending to keep moving. You don't have to see the full picture to be part of the masterpiece. You don't need to write the next line, you just need to stay on the page. Don't close the book over one dark sentence. Don't burn the manuscript because you forgot how the light felt. Don't assume silence means abandonment. Sometimes the author writes best in the quiet. You've seen others race ahead. They flipped pages faster. Their stories looked cleaner, shinier, more complete. But don't compare chapters when you don't know their edits. Every good story has struggle. Every hero has hesitation. Every breakthrough has a moment of breaking. You're not behind, you're in progress. Remember this, there is a purpose to your process, even the delays. Even the disappointments. What you call a detour, he calls development. What you call a mistake, he calls a plot twist that leads to growth. You've thrown down the pen before. You've screamed at the ceiling, told God, "I'm done." But the very next morning, you were still here. Still breathing, still trying, still turning the page, because something deep inside you refuses to quit. Not because you're strong, but because he who holds your story refuses to drop it. There are still lines to write, conversations to have, doors to walk through, people to love, wounds to heal. Your scars aren't the end of your sentence. They're commas in a testimony still being written by grace. You didn't survive this long just to fade in the footnotes. You weren't kept alive just to drift in the margins. You are still here because your assignment isn't finished. Your impact hasn't yet unfolded. Your name is still in the story because heaven is still writing. It's okay if you don't feel like a main character right now. Even the strong get tired. Even the brave question their direction. But the author sees the arc even when the character feels lost in the moment. Your story is layered. It's not linear. It doesn't need to make sense right now to make meaning in the end. You've lost things, yes, people, dreams, moments that cannot be repeated. but even loss has language. Even grief has a place in the plot. It slows you down for a reason. It presses pause on the noise. It forces you to pay attention to the part of you that's still alive. You are not forgotten. You are not discarded. You are not a rough draft waiting to be erased. You are a work in progress held by hands that don't quit. So keep turning the page, even if it's slow, even if your hands shake, even if all you see is blank space for now. Because blank space to you is breathing room for him, room for the next miracle, the next shift, the next line that will make everything make sense. He's not done with you. The story is not finished. The pen is still in his hand, and you, beloved, are still in the story. You've been watching the clock, counting how many years you lost, counting how many others got there before you, counting how long it's been since something truly moved. But time is not your enemy. Time is not a thief. It's a tool in the hand of the one who sees the end from the beginning. You thought you missed it, the opportunity, the moment, the window that was supposed to open when you were younger. Stronger, clearer, but heaven does not panic over earthly clocks. God doesn't rush because people move fast. He doesn't race because culture says you're behind. He waits on purpose, for purpose. Because maturity doesn't grow in microwaves. You've mistaken delay for denial, but delay is not rejection, it's refinement. You weren't being punished. You were being prepared. Some things take time because your strength wasn't ready. Some seasons were paused because your character couldn't yet carry the weight of what was coming. You don't need to be 20 again to start. You don't need to be in your prime to begin. You don't need to be the first. You need only be faithful when it's finally your turn. You've looked at the mirror and called yourself too old, too far gone, too late, but the mirror lies when it speaks through fear. Moses was 80 when purpose caught up to him. Sarah laughed at her age and still gave birth to promise. Caleb was an old man when he said, "Give me my mountain," because age never limits what God still calls possible. You're not late. You're on divine schedule, and divine schedules don't rush with the crowd. They unfold in sacred timing. You didn't waste too much time. You learned through every year that felt still. You weren't stuck, you were growing roots. You weren't drifting, you were being aligned. The silence in your life wasn't emptiness. It was a reset, not the absence of purpose, but the quiet expansion of it underneath the surface. Even trees take years underground before they ever show above. Even diamonds hide in darkness before anyone sees their worth. Even promises are often planted before they are ever public. You look around and see people younger doing what you dreamed of. Don't let comparison convince you you've been replaced. God doesn't substitute, he customizes, and what's yours can't be claimed by anyone else. You've outgrown some rooms because your purpose needs more space now. You've outlived certain timelines because your calling is bigger than the calendar you designed. You think God forgot you, but what if he was building a stage you weren't ready to stand on? What if he was creating capacity in the delay you kept calling disappointment? It's not too late. You're not too old. Your mistakes haven't expired your mission. Your waiting hasn't wasted your anointing. You still carry value, still carry fire, still carry words that need to be heard, still carry solutions that are waiting for your hands. The world moves fast, but eternity is not in a hurry. You don't need to sprint to catch up. You need to walk with the rhythm of grace, and grace has its own time zone. This isn't a race, it's a calling. And callings don't expire when the culture says too late. They echo louder when you finally listen. Don't bury your gifts because you think the world moved on. Don't silence your wisdom because youth is louder. Don't fold your dreams because you think the time passed. Purpose doesn't live in the past. It waits in the present for your yes. So bring your age, bring your history, bring your delays and your doubts and your disappointments. Bring the full weight of everything time has taught you, because what took years to shape will not collapse in a single moment of obedience. Time didn't take your purpose, it revealed it, layer by layer. pain by pain, lesson by lesson, and now you are finally becoming someone who can carry the weight of what you once only imagined. So no, you're not late. You're just right on time for what heaven always planned.